welcome to another episode of Positive Parenting with Astrology. I am your host and resident Gemini, Maria Rieger, and today we're talking about how to parent your Aquarius child when you're an Aquarius mom or an Aquarius dad. That's right, you guys have asked for more videos on Aquarius energy. One of you specifically asked for this video when the parent and the child are both Aquarius suns or Aquarius moons. So that's what we're talking about today. But wait, there's more. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel for your free weekly Positive Parenting with Astrology content. And there's even more. We are very close, 30 subscribers away from monetizing this channel. So please, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Please share with your friends and get us to those 32 subscribers, additional subscribers. And when that happens, my sister and I will do a live event. Very excited about that. If you'd like to talk to me about possibly hiring me for an event, either a local event or not local, I will travel, you can email me at the booking email address below. If you're interested in a relationship reading, a birth chart reading, or a parent-child reading, you can click on the booking link below. So let's get started. So we're going to talk first about just a high-level overview of Aquarius energy, which I also go over in other videos. And then we're going to talk about the dynamic that occurs when the parent and the child are both Aquarians. So Aquarius is, as we know, fixed air. It's very interesting because air is not innately of a fixed quality. So it's an interesting energy. So air energy means it's a masculine energy sign. It approaches the world from a place of logic, rationality, detachment, analysis, things like that. It's a fixed sign. So fixed in the sense of it's interested in maintaining things as they are or changing things so the things are like they were before. It's fixed modality signs have more of a challenging time with transition, things like that. So we've talked in other videos about Aquarius being the revolutionary sign, the sign associated with the 11th house, which is the house that rules society, social groups, friendships, acquaintances, belonging, things like that. So Aquarians seek to belong, but it is also an independent sign. So Aquarians seek to be independent and have freedom within the context of the group. They want the freedom and independence to do what they want, and they also want to feel that they belong to something greater than themselves. So that's what's so interesting about the sign. And it is a revolutionary sign, and it is a sign that supports revolutionary, sometimes lightning fast change. Remember, it is ruled by the planet Uranus. And when you are experiencing a Uranus transit in your chart, whatever Uranus is touching in your chart, it's going to change things drastically, sometimes overnight. It's going to break things down in your life, shake things up so that you can start to rebuild from the pieces that Uranus leaves behind. That's the way to think about the Uranus transit, kind of at a high level. So in order for Aquarius to affect this kind of long-lasting radical change, they need to have fixed ideals. If Aquarians were more like Gemini, mutable energy, we change our minds all the time, sometimes daily, sometimes multiple times a day, you would not be able to affect the long-lasting change that's required. So that's why Aquarius it makes sense for the sign known as the revolutionary sign to have fixed ideals. And if you know a lot of Aquarius adults, you'll know that they are open-minded, but they are also very fixed in their values and their ideals. They have very strong, steadfast values and morals. So it's very interesting. Now remember, air is an energy that covers a lot of ground, but in a kind of a superficial way. So air people tend to have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things and a lot of different areas, but they don't always have that in-depth knowledge that, say, a Scorpio would seek to have, right? And air tends to move around obstacles instead of facing obstacles head on. Air people in general are not super comfortable with direct confrontation, very direct communication, or very assertive communication. Aquarius seems to be way more comfortable with these things than Libra and Gemini. And I theorize that that is because in traditional astrology, Aquarius was co-ruled by Uranus and Saturn. Now, Saturn is also the ruler of Capricorn. Capricorn is very emotionally stoic, emotionally controlled energy. Capricorn is an energy with a lot of determination. Capricorn people are very comfortable, generally very comfortable with direct confrontation and direct assertive communication. So Aquarius in general is more comfortable with confrontation and direct assertive communication than Gemini and Libra. But you may find that your Aquarius child needs some help self-advocating because of that tendency, that air tendency. Okay, so what happens when you have the parent and the child with the same sun sign or the same moon sign? Now, of course, knowing that each individual has their own chart, and the charts are not going to be exactly the same. So you may have two Aquarian sun people with very different moon signs, and there will be differences in how they respond to anything touching on their emotions or how they show up in relationships because the moon sign are so different. But when you have two people who are Aquarius suns, they're going to approach the world from a very similar place. So when you have two people with the same sun sign, let's say, in this case Aquarius, there's always a tendency to merge, okay? The individuals have a tendency to merge. I find that this is more profound with fire people or water people. When you have two fire sun people, they tend to burn as one entity. When you have two water sun people, water tends to blur the boundaries between the two individuals. So they're making them more prone to that merging phenomenon where the individuals are thought of as or considered as one entity instead of two separate sovereign entities. So when you have two air people, that tendency to merge is less profound because air is a naturally detached energy, okay? Nevertheless, that tendency still exists. So as the parent, and remember the onus, the burden of the relationship, the responsibility for the parent-child relationships is always with the parent, who is obviously has more life experience and is guiding the child, right? So your child is not responsible for the health of your relationship. You are responsible as the parent for the health of the relationship. Okay, so the first big thing to know is that risk of merging, that risk of seeing the child as an extension of yourself because their energy is so similar to you, okay? So you always want to make sure that you are communicating and conveying to your Aquarius child that even though your energies are very similar and you will exhibit similar characteristics and similar ways of managing life and approaching life, your child is a separate sovereign entity from you. Even if the energy is similar, they are separate from you and they will have differences. There will be differences. Your child will have different thoughts, values, ways of handling things, and that's okay. So that's the first main takeaway. So instead of saying things like, oh, you're exactly like me, or you handled that thing exactly like I would have, or I've been in this position before, so you need to listen to me and say what I do, that tendency is less with an Aquarius parent because Aquarius people are naturally freedom loving, right? And they naturally instill that love of freedom in the child. But there's always a risk because the parent's in the place of authority, the place of guidance. So there's always a risk to, without intending to, communicate to the child that the child is an extension of the parent and the child should do what the parent says. So instead of saying things like, oh, you're just like me, or I experienced that, so here's how you should handle that. You can say things like, yeah, I understand completely what you're going through. That happened to me and it was difficult. If you need help, I'm here. Or is there anything I can do? Or would it be okay if I offer you some guidance or some advice on how to handle that? This works especially with older kids, adolescents, and teens. And importantly, if your child said, no, I'm good, you don't need to share the guidance, let it go, okay? It's going to be frustrating, but let it go. Because if you're foisting your guidance and your direction on kids, they're going to be way less willing to take your guidance. But if you approach it from a place of collaboration, right, and respecting the child's freedom, which you will because you're an Aquarius, then your child will be much more likely to listen to you and accept your guidance, okay? So it's a very important distinction. Always want to be encouraging your Aquarius child to exercise self-autonomy, to make their own decisions. Remember, Aquarians crave freedom, and one of the worst things to do to an Aquarius child is to disempower them or to prevent them from exercising the freedom, okay? And it's hard for parents to let go. Even Aquarian parents, it's hard to let go and let your kids make mistakes, but you have to, right? Because that's how they learn, and they have to learn to navigate life. And kids, kids who feel disempowered, who feel like they have no say in their lives, are at risk for mental illness like depression and anxiety because they feel like they have no say. Remember, as many parenting experts say, you have to fill a child's love bucket and a child's power bucket. And kids seek more autonomy and independence and freedom as they get older. And it is important to respect that. It is important in order to prepare your Aquarius child for the future and in order to preserve your relationship with your Aquarius child. Okay, so on a more positive note, when you're an Aquarius parent parenting an Aquarius child, it's obviously less of a challenge for you to understand the child's innate traits because they are your innate traits, okay? So any sign combination can potentially have a good relationship if an effort is made. The thing with a case where the parent and child are exhibiting very similar energies is that it takes the parent less effort to understand where the child is coming from, okay? And as we know, parenting takes a lot of our energy. So if you can conserve energy, right, by having something be less of an effort, less of a challenge, that's always a good thing. So in short, it takes you less effort to understand your Aquarius child because the energies are so similar. And it also provides you the basis for a more profound, closer connection with your Aquarius child. Once again, because you have likely lived their experience. I experience that with my kid all the time. We don't have the same sun sign, but I'm a Gemini sun and he's a Gemini moon. So I feel like sometimes I'm like living in my childhood again on some level because he's having so many of the same experiences that I had and dealing with them similarly to how I dealt with them. Not exactly the same because our energies are different in other ways, but there's enough of a similarity that I feel like I'm sometimes reliving my childhood. So it gives a possibility for you to have a closer connection because you've lived that experience. And that's a great thing. Now, an Aquarius parent and an Aquarius child will likely be great at keeping up with each other. Aquarian people generally have a lot of energy and that extends into adulthood. The air energy almost makes you like two butterflies flitting about. That's how my sister and I are. We have a lot of air energy in our charts. Like two butterflies flitting about, right? And you can match each other's energy, which is great because you can keep up with each other. And the Aquarius parent is likely has enough energy that they're engaging in play with the kids, right? Which is, by the way, a great way to bond with your kids. You can also expect to have a lot of interesting intellectual conversations with your Aquarius child, even the younger Aquarius children. They have this lifelong curiosity and love of learning that's great to encourage and that, provides the basis for you to have a lot of really cool experiences together. Now, one of the areas where Aquarius parents can work on themselves is regarding empathy. All the air signs, especially Aquarius and Gemini, can benefit from working on empathy. And one of the ways we teach our kids empathy, I always say this, right, is to show them empathy, is to have empathy for the kids, okay? Now, Aquarius, as a logical, analytical air sign, has a tendency to be a fixer. The Aquarius parents have a tendency to, when the kid has a problem or gets hurt, to rush in and fix things automatically. But kids largely want comfort first. They want to be seen and heard first before you try to fix things for them, okay? So I've said this in other videos. When your child has a problem, instead of going in and fixing it and addressing it right away, you can ask them, do you need me to do anything? Or would you like comfort first? Or would you like solutions? That's good for older kids. Younger kids probably want to be held and comforted first. So you have to teach yourself. I had to teach myself this, right? You have to teach yourself to comfort first before offering solutions, before offering help. Because kids want to be seen and validated first before you offer help. And older kids, I've experienced that older kids sometimes get really irritated when the parent jumps in and starts fixing things. they may, because sometimes they share things with you, like their problems, because they want comfort and validation. They don't want you to step in and fix it, right? So that's something that a lot of parents, especially moms, including myself, have had to work on, especially air sign parents. We've had to work on this, right? Instead of going in and jumping in and fixing the problem, validate the kid's experience first and then ask, would you like me to do anything? Do you need any help? Can I do anything about this? Would you like me to talk to the teacher about this? And if the kid says no, respect that. I read this great book recently called How to Raise an Adult, which I largely agree with. And that's one of the main themes, is that parents are just doing too much for their kids. We're doing everything for them, doing their work, helping them manage things. And we need to let them make mistakes. We need to let them fail. And in doing the things and even failing, kids get self-confidence because they learn that they can do these things. If the parent's always doing the things for the kids, even the older kids, we're sending the message that the kids are incompetent of managing their own lives. So what happens? They turn 18 and you send them out of the house and you send them to college. And if you've been doing everything for them, they're not going to be able to do it for themselves. They're not going to be able to cook. I've talked to grown women who say, yeah, when I went to college, I couldn't even boil water. My parents never taught me anything, right? I was in law school, not college, law school. And I had a classmate who was engaged and she said, my parents still do my taxes for me. And I'm like, no, you should be doing your own taxes or hiring somebody to do them for you. Your parents should be like, you're old enough to do your own taxes now. You're in your 30s, things like this. So it is so important for us to stop our tendency from jumping in to fix our kids' problems, right? So obviously, as air signs, we're very analytical people. And from an analytical point of view, we the parents, we can do X thing better than the kids because we have more life experience. So you may think on an analytical level, it just makes logical sense for me to do this because the kid's going to mess it up. But we're not guiding them or teaching them how to do it themselves, right? So that's very important. Let go of the perfectionism, let go of the need to fix things, because we don't want to disempower our kids. We want to teach our kids that they can do things, they'll make mistakes, and that's okay. It's not the end of the road. They are capable of doing hard things. Okay, next, Aquarius parents should be conscious of their emotional triggers. Air sign people, we tend to live on our nerves. We tend to be easily triggered. I find this is more profound for Gemini than for Aquarius, but it exists for Aquarius too, so I'll mention it here. So we are prone to some overreaction. We are prone to being triggered because air sign people, we have a very kind of reactive nervous system. If that is you, it's okay, but work on your triggers, okay? Because we don't want to be overreacting to our kids when the kids do something that's normal or developmentally normal, or they're just acting like a kid. And the definition of a trigger is an emotional or physical overreaction to something that's not commensurate with the event that caused you to have the reaction. It's almost always rooted in childhood. I have a lot of triggers, so I can speak about this. But the burden to deal with the triggers is on the parent. It's not on the child. My triggers are my issue to deal with, or not my kid's issue. And if we're constantly overreacting physically or emotionally to our kids, we're sending them a message that we don't want to be bothered. We're sending them a message that mom or dad can't handle the things they're telling us or sharing with us. And that tends to cause kids to go underground with those things. That tends to cause kids to be more private, to share less. And we want to encourage our kids to share more with us, right? We want our kids to share with us, especially if they're in trouble. We want to know about it. If really bad things happen to them, we want to know about it. So we have to do everything possible to encourage our kids to continue sharing things with us, even bad things. I'm using air quotes here, right? Even things that we're going to be upset about. It's like I told my kid one day, I said, look, you're getting older, you're going to drive in a couple of years, you are going to do things your dad and I don't approve of. You're going to, because you're a teen boy and your impulse control is not fully developed. But that's okay, right? That will not harm our relationship. That will not break our relationship. you need to feel comfortable coming to us if something happens and if you need help, right? That's the message you want to be sending kids. So to the extent that we air sign parents have our own triggers to work on, we have to do that. And one of the first ways we can start working on that is when we start feeling like we're about to overreact, just pause, don't do anything. Don't speak, don't text, don't email, just wait. Like wait 10 minutes. And I find that almost always if I wait 10 minutes, my nervous system calms down, I calm down, and I think, okay, what I was about to overreact about is really not commensurate with the event that happened. That is my issue. My nervous system is feeling triggered. That is not my kid's issue, right? So you want to avoid saying something in the heat of the moment that's going to harm the relationship or push your kid away. That's the point of that pause that I'm talking about. You can also go into another room. You can go do something fun. You can just take a few minutes outside. You can do some breathing exercises. I have done all of those things at some point in my parenting journey to calm down, okay? And it's also one of the reasons this is so important is because when a child feels triggered by the parent's behavior, because often the parent's overreaction causes the child to be in fight or flight, especially if it's an air sign child. So if you're an Aquarius parent parenting an Aquarius child, this tendency is even more profound for the child to be triggered by the parent's overreaction. And when the child is triggered and put in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, then the child's learning centers of the brain shut down. The child cannot retain information. The child cannot process or analyze any information. And they're not able to listen to you and retain what you're telling them, okay? So not only does it have the potential to harm the relationship, but we're not teaching the child anything in that moment because they're not in a receptive state to receive any information. I'm sure you can think of a time when you were a kid where maybe you were very upset or triggered about something and you had a test or a quiz that day and you performed poorly on the test or quiz because you were so triggered. And one of the reasons that you didn't perform as well as you wanted to was because you were not able to. You were not able to synthesize and analyze the information because of your state. So sometimes I find that it's helpful when we're trying to put ourselves in the shoes of our child to think back to those similar times in our own childhood and think about what worked and did not work for us. I ask parents that all the time. Were you yelled at as a kid? Yes. Did it help you? No. So things like this. So we want to practice the pause so we're not overreacting. Okay, another area Aquarius parents can focus on in this dynamic with parenting the Aquarius child is to be consistent on boundaries. This is less of a problem for an Aquarius parent than it is for a Gemini parent. If you saw my video on Gemini parenting an Aquarius child, I talked about this a lot because Geminis, our biggest flaw as parents, in my opinion, is the inconsistency. We change our minds all the time because we're analyzing information all the time, and that tends to make us inconsistent parents. That has definitely been the case for me. So that tendency exists for all air sign parents. Less profound for Aquarius, but it still exists. So as an analytical, logical air sign, you're open to thinking about things in different ways. You're open to changing your minds. But sometimes that makes us inconsistent parents. So what I recommend for dealing with that is to decide ahead of time on those really important topics that are not negotiable for you as a parent. Make a decision ahead of time so you're not forced to make a decision in the heat of the moment when your kid asks for something or asks you a question and you're like, I don't know how to think about this, but I feel pressured, so I have to make a decision. You don't have to make a decision right away, okay? So number one, make a decision ahead of time when you're calm, right? Not when your kid is pressuring you and peppering you with questions about those no bargain issues, and hold fast to those. If your kid asks you something and you're not ready to make a decision, say, I will think about that. Please don't pressure me for a decision right now. If you're going to pressure me for a decision or continually ask me the same question, right now the answer is going to be no. Please stop pressuring me. I will think about it. I don't want to be asked this question for the next week. So those are some ways you can deal with that so you can be more consistent with your boundaries and also consistent about communicating. Remember that boundaries are psychologically comforting for children. This is something that took me a while to understand, but when I think back to my own childhood and I think about times where my parents gave me rules, they were actually psychologically comforting on some level. So if you're not giving your kids rules and boundaries, you're not setting guidelines for them. Okay, it's very important that you set those guidelines and boundaries. Okay, not because we're authoritarian parents, but these are guidelines for example, self-care and health and things like this. No, we have to turn screens off at 8 p.m. on school nights. For example, this is a health reason. It's not because I'm a mean mom. You're an Aquarius parent, right? You like freedom. You don't like rules. But some rules are necessary for reasons like health, for reasons like safety, including mental health, physical health. So boundaries, for example, kids texting their friends is a big one. That was a big one in our house. You don't have to text your friends back in the moment they text you. You respond to people on your own time. Don't feel pressured to respond. Okay, that's very important. Aquarius children are very good at convincing the parents because they're very logical and make good arguments. They sound very reasonable, okay? But it's okay to have those no bargain issues. Every household should have them. Every parent should have them. These are the issues, the decisions that I am not willing to negotiate on because of X, Y reason, okay? These are not open for debate. But everything else may potentially be open for debate, or we can at least have a conversation about it. I don't believe in shutting kids down. I don't believe in when a kid asks a question, the parent shutting down the question, saying stop asking or stop talking. I believe in hearing the kid out, but then having a firm response, or not. Maybe it's something you have to think about, but at least hear the child out. So I think in those ways you can model good, healthy give and take for your Aquarius child. I've also talked about this in my video on Gemini parents at parenting Aquarius kids. To a Gemini, negotiating is like breathing. That tendency is a little less extreme with Aquarius, but being a rational air sign, Aquarians are also pretty good negotiators. Good at weighing pros and cons. I'm a fan of negotiating with kids because I think negotiating with kids teaches them a good life skill. It teaches them to think critically. It teaches them about the art of persuasion. I mean, kids learn persuasive writing in school, right? So teaching them persuasive writing, persuasive communication is a good thing, as long as you're also teaching them to respect boundaries. And remember, we talked about showing consistency in communication. Now, Aquarius is a fixed sign with structured, strong ideals and morals. So there's almost always a tendency for Aquarius to project those morals onto your kids because you're very steadfast in your beliefs and morals. And that's great, right? One of the great things about the energy. But you want to be careful about projecting those morals onto your kids. And we talked about that at the beginning of this video, about how it's important to remember that your Aquarius child is a separate sovereign entity from you and is going to have different morals and beliefs, and is going to also be very steadfast about them. So you need to, as the parent, accept that about your kid. Make sure you're not communicating to your kid or suggesting that their ideals and beliefs are somehow inferior to yours. That they are entitled to their opinions, ideals, beliefs, even if they are different from yours, and that even if they're different, they still have value. And in closing, I just want to remind you, as the Aquarius parent of an Aquarius child, you will likely naturally do this already, but just a reminder that support your child's autonomy and independence as they get older. Aquarians crave freedom. They crave independence. They crave thinking and acting for themselves, doing things for themselves. So the parents of Aquarius kids should be supporting that in an age-appropriate way as the kids get older, giving the kids more autonomy as they get older, more of a say in what happens to them. Convey to your Aquarius child that you trust their decision-making, that they will, if they show some indecisiveness, you can reassure them that you will make the right decision. And if it turns out it didn't work out, right? But you'll make the right decision because you're the one making the decision for you. And if it turns out, in hindsight, it wasn't a great decision, well, you learned from it. Do everything to show your Aquarius child that you love them no matter what, that nothing will break the relationship. When that bond is very strong, your Aquarius child will thrive. And I've said this in other videos about Aquarius. Every Aquarius adult I know is a very successful, fulfilled individual, okay? Your Aquarius kid will be fine as long as you're providing them guidance and the freedom that they crave. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back soon.